ethnic Asians are present and integral to the success of music education programs across the United States. However, Asian Americans are often overlooked, taken for granted, or dismissed when it comes to discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Referred to as the model minority, Asians deal with stereotypes, racism, and prejudices that are often misunderstood and ignored by many in education. And today I want to discuss how systemic racism against Asians is apparent and frequently invisible to many in the academy. Pew Research Center says that the Asian American population is the fastest growing minority in America. Of nearly 321 million people in America, almost 18 million, or 5.6% of them are of Asian descent. On your handout, you'll see the percentages of Asian American undergraduate students in each of our Big Ten's universities and their respective states. And unfortunately, I've not been able to gather the number of Asian Americans who are currently enrolled in music courses. However, I want you to think about your students and ask yourself, how many Asian students are taking music education courses? Are those courses, are there courses or ensembles that Asian students tend to clump together in? In K-12 school, in the K-12 schools that you're familiar, have you seen Asian students, and how are they involved with their music program? And now I ask you, did you make any assumptions about Asian students, or did you notice yourself thinking about any specific stereotypes? The Asian race is often referred to as the model minority. Common reasons include a high level of achievement and a non-confrontational response to racially charged altercations. And while some Asians cling to the model minority because it affords privilege and a sense of pride, there are many dangers that come with this marker. A common stereotype of the model minority is that all Asians are smart, good at math, quiet, compliant learners. The discourse results in an unrealistic expectation of Asian American students, and Goldstein reported that some educators pass Asian students not because of their ability to show what they've learned, but because of the color of their skin and their compliance. Lee quoted a student lamenting about their experience in high school. If you don't do that well in math or science, the teacher's like, what are you, some kind of mutant Asian? Wow. The student was expected to understand a subject just because of the color of their skin. I ask you again to dig into your memory and try to remember an instance where you might have seen or heard something like this happen in music. Asian Americans are often praised for their willingness to not speak up. When some marginalized people speak up for their rights and challenge the poor treatment of their members, the model minority is often held up as an exemplar of assimilation and peace. The nature of the word model perpetuates and encourages racial hierarchy, which often leads to feelings of resentment from those who perceive themselves lower in the minority scale. Similarly, when the model minority does better than the majority, the model citizens are often seen as a threat to those in power. I would like to take a moment to speak as a person who struggles with my own racial identity. My mother's white, my father's Filipino. When I applied for jobs in higher ed, that's when I realized how complex my racial and ethnic identity is. I'm also considered Hispanic because my father's family comes from Spain. But when I was born, he wanted to make sure that I was his American son. He was trilingual. He'd go from English to Spanish to Tagalog without hesitation. But because I was to be an American, I would learn only English, not the dirty third world country speech that he grew up speaking. It wasn't until I was in my 30s when I realized how much my father's pride in America instilled a racial self-hatred in me. My father's self-hatred and my own racial confusion are not unique amongst Asian American community. Some poke fun of their ethnic traditions when they're around those in the majority to gain acceptance and lessen tension. As I became more aware of my own racial heritage, I began to notice blatant racism and experience microaggressions against other Asians. And I realized how prevalent these acts are and how much they affected me. Asian American racism is prominent and, dare I say, acceptable in many parts of our society. Let me give you some examples of prejudices that I've heard and experienced in Big Ten universities. Someone told me, we get plenty of Asian applicants, but we don't really consider them because they just don't understand how we do it in America. Another colleague warned me, oh, be careful, referring to a Korean student's application for a work-study program. For the last 2 years, I've hired people from her background. Those people are notoriously more work than they're worth. I ended up doing most of the job myself. And finally, I heard a teacher say, nowadays I get lazy Chinese in class. Back in the day, they were always the best. They can afford to come here to study, so that's good, we'll take their money. They're just not how they used to be. 3 different conversations in various institutions with people that I respected. I used to think to myself, it's ignorance. These people just don't get what they're saying is wrong. But Lee implores us, the belief that racism is based on ignorance denies the fact that racism has structural roots. It denies the fact that there might be rational and self-interested reasons to be racist. It denies the fact that attitudes towards others are influenced by relative status and position. So what do we do? I have 4 suggestions on how we all can be allies for ethnic Asians in music education. Encourage your Asian colleagues to speak out about their racial, ethnic, and cultural experiences. We need to be heard. We can no longer have dormant voices in a time where diversity and inclusion are being discussed. Number 2, learn not only about your students' racial differences, but also their cultural experiences and their ethnicities. One problem with the Asian race category is that it lumps together a group of people from very different ethnic backgrounds. If you look at the map, which you've got in front of you, a little dark, sorry, but you've got it in front of you. You've got Russia to India, parts of the Middle East, superpowers like China, Japan, and Korea, and third world and developing countries like Laos, the Philippines, and Afghanistan. Never assume you know what type of Asian your student is or how long their family's been in America. And don't forget that Asian adoptees often have parents who have different colored skins. And then finally, 4, challenge your own biases and stereotypes and do not hold students up to a standard just because of the color of their skin. Thank you.